Essential oils. They've been around for millennia and have been used medicinally for various different ailments. But did you also know that essential oils can be used for various vision as well as brain issues? Find out more on this week's episode of the IQ podcast when I'll be interviewing my special guest, Jodi Cohen, an essential oils expert and founder of Vibrant Blue Oils. Stay tuned. Welcome to the IQ podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Rani Banik. And in this podcast, you will gain insights into your eye health and your brain health and learn a lot along the way and have some fun as well. So today I have a really special guest I wanted to introduce you to. She is someone I've met who is a health and wellness entrepreneur, Jodi Cohen. So Jodi Cohen is a best-selling author, award-winning journalist, functional practitioner, and founder of Vibrant Blue Oils, where she's combined her training in nutritional therapy and aromatherapy to create unique proprietary blends of organic and wild-crafted essential oils. She has helped over 50,000 clients heal from brain-related challenges, including anxiety, insomnia, and autoimmunity. For the past 10 years, Jodi has lectured at wellness centers, conferences, and corporations on brain health, essential oils, stress, and detoxification. She's been seen in the New York Times, on the podcast Wellness Mama, Elephant Journal, and numerous publications. Her website, vibrantblueoils.com, is visited by over 300,000 natural health seekers every year, and she has rapidly become a top resource for essential oils education on the internet today. Thank you so much for joining us, Jodi.
Oh my goodness, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the first time we met, it was probably now like 4 or 5 years ago. And you were sharing with me what you were doing, and I was sharing with you what I was doing. And we thought that there was definitely some overlap there in how we approach health. But I would love to kind of dive into what you're doing and how it can be applied to vision health as well as brain health. But before we get into that, I wanted to start by just asking you to share your story about how you got interested in essential oils, particularly for wellness.
I think, necessity is the mother of invention. And I originally got into nutrition through my children. First, my oldest was super easy, super healthy. And so I had another one 22 months later, and he was not as easy or as healthy. And one of my friends at a play date noticed that when he ate things, his personality changed, and suggested that I take him to see a nutritionist because her brother was on Ritalin his whole life, and it turned out he was just allergic to certain foods. And so I did, and his whole personality changed. Like I was taking every parenting course I could find, and one of them was like, look at my nose, and he could never look at the nose. And then once we took out certain foods, for him it was corn, soy, and dairy, his whole personality changed. And I was so blown away because I had invested so much time trying to focus on behavior modification that I went back and got a degree in nutritional therapy and was trying to work with other moms, managing their stress and also helping them make changes to make their child more, their behavior more manageable. And so I started playing with oils then, just because, my little guy didn't really like to eat kale, but he would never say no to me putting oils on his feet.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a fascinating story. Oftentimes many of us who are in the health and wellness space, we come across this because there's been a challenge, whether it's like a personal challenge or a family or close friend, and we happen to stumble upon it. So it's just so interesting how you taken your child to all of these other types of therapies, yet the real issue was diet. So you started to do oils. Now, were you just kind of experimenting? Were you following any kind of guide as you were, trying these oils on your little one?
Honestly, for him, it was basically just, we live in Seattle, Washington, which is right near Sequim where they make lavender. So that's where I started. And then, life took an unexpected turn. His dad was bipolar and was getting more and more depressed to the point where I really feared he might die on my watch. And when I moved him into a residential treatment facility, sometimes when you're caregiving for other people, you don't realize how exhausting it is and how draining it is. And once, I knew he was safe and it wasn't my job to keep him safe, it was like I collapsed after a 10-year marathon. And at that point, I was a single mom. My kids were 5 and 7. I had a full time job. I was class parent. I was doing all these things. And I literally couldn't function. I would get up with my kids, make them breakfast, pack their lunch, drop them at school, come home, set the alarm for 10 minutes before pickup, and nap all day. And I knew it wasn't sustainable. And so I started really looking at what causes this kind of exhaustion, adrenal fatigue. And then what is upstream of adrenal fatigue is kind of that chronic fight or flight sympathetic response. So, autonomic nervous system is designed to keep you alive. It controls all of your automatic functions, your heart rate, your breathing, your ability to digest food, detoxify, and it prioritizes survival. So when it perceives danger, be it physical danger or emotional or mental danger, it allocates resources towards survival. And what this means is blood is literally routed away from your core, from digestion and detoxification, to your arms and your limbs. Your focus is very kind of focused on that threat and surviving it. And over time, it's called sympathetic dominance. It's your sympathetic branch of your nervous system that's fight or flight. And ideally, anyone who has a dog, you'll take the dog on the walk. Maybe they'll interact with another dog. Maybe they'll bark. And if you kind of keep them going, what do? They shake. What they're doing is, that dog was a perceived threat. They, start to either fight or flight, and then they're safe and they regulate their nervous system by shaking and shifting into parasympathetic. We don't do that, or we don't do that enough. And so what I realized was I had been so sympathetic for so long. So I started looking at how do I activate my parasympathetic nervous system. And I'm a great researcher, and I was really struck by this idea of stimulating your vagus nerve. And many of us do that through breathing techniques. The vagus nerve is basically the gear shift between your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. It's the gut-brain connection. So anatomically, it starts at the base of the skull, winds around both sides of the neck. And if you feel kind of behind your earlobe on your mastoid bone, that is where it is literally the most accessible to the surface. It then winds through your throat, your heart, your lungs, every organ of digestion and detoxification. One of my mentors, Tatis Karazian, talked about like gagging yourself with a tongue depressor because it innervates your throat, splashing your face with freezing water. All of these things that are both unpleasant and hard to implement in the moment. And I found some research. There is actually an FDA-approved device that's surgically implanted right here, and it stimulates your vagus nerve. And when I saw that, some essential oils are known as stimulatory or hot. That would include like oregano, thyme, clove, peppermint, rosemary. And what that means is sometimes if you put it on your skin, it feels a little red, it feels a little hot or ouchy. If that ever happens, just dilute it with another oil. But I started thinking, I wonder, the skin is so sensitive to topical remedies. It's basically our biggest organ. I wonder if I could use a stimulatory oil to elicit the same response. And so I started playing with oils. And what I realized, blending is an interesting thing because clove actually is very high in this constituent eugenol, which is fabulous. Clove worked the best, but it was kind of time delayed because it has slightly larger molecules. So I blended it with lime, which has very small molecules. And so it's a little bit, like how they breed horses. It all of a sudden was incredibly stimulatory and very fast acting. And so I just started playing with that whenever I was feeling overwhelmingly anxious, overwhelmed. I believe anxiety is correlated with our autonomic nervous system and our sympathetic drive to kind of fight or flight, all of the things, your heart racing, your inability to like really problem solve and regulate. That's all kind of your body's desire to either prepare you to fight or flee. And so I started with this parasympathetic blend. It was just like,
So
when
you
you're
basically
drowning.
you were experimenting. You were like trying out different percentages and seeing how you responded on your or
Yes.
trying yourself, right? So I
I
just want to sum up a little, just for our listeners. You gave so much amazing information there and personal stories. But so, we have a balance in our bodies between the sympathetic system and the parasympathetic system. And yes, there are certain times when our sympathetic system kicks in, when we need to get up and do something or do something quickly, what, as you said, when we perceive a threat. But if we have too much stimulation, it can actually put us into a state that's not good. And you were saying that it could lead to, in some cases, chronic fatigue. So that's why it's so important to balance out the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, particularly if you have a lot of stress going on in your life. So that's my takeaway from what you said is you really have to think about balancing them out. And it's so fascinating. You were talking about like the vagus nerve being right here. There also is, and this research probably came after the research that you had read, Jodi, but there's a handheld device that stimulates the vagus nerve, and it's FDA approved for migraine. It's called Gamma Core, and there's no proprietary interest. I don't have any financial interest in it, but basically you hold it here on your carotid artery, and it's supposed to stimulate in your neck the vagus nerve and put you into more of a parasympathetic state. So it is FDA approved to treat pain, and now we're also learning that it's also great to treat other things like anxiety and PTSD. And so the indications are really growing. So what you're doing is a different type of stimulation of the parasympathetic system, right? So topically, you're putting these compounds on topically to get it absorbed, to get a nervous balance. Is that correct? Is that kind of what you're aiming
Um,
for?
uh, yeah, let me explain better. But I did want to kind of call out our fight and flight survival instinct. It's not just the lion chasing us or something that's going on in our life. We could turn on the news and see a school shooting, and that can stimulate our kind of danger response because our mind starts to go to, oh my goodness, could that happen at my kid's school? And anticipatory stress signals our nervous system the same as kind of existing stress. And that can also be things in the past. If you survived any kind of assault, anything that could be playing in the background. So just to elaborate on that. And then the second question is, this is doing two things. It's stimulating your vagus nerve in the same way that devices are, but it's also because, most people don't realize essential oils are really the concentrated essence of the plant. So you pick the lavender, you put it in the big vat, you don't boil it, you kind of boil the water elsewhere, and the steam distills it and kind of basically helps to naturally extract the healing essence of the plant. And so the steam is then cooled, water and oil don't mix. So the oil is really concentrated, and it's the healing part of the plant. And plants are basically the root of all pharmaceutical drugs. Over 50% of pharmaceutical drugs are derived from plants. White willow bark is now aspirin. Valerian root is Valium. And so there are chemical constituents in here that do other things, because one of the reasons you always have to go upstream, right? So my adrenals are exhausted. Why? What's causing my adrenals to be fatigued? Is it chronic stress? Is it a viral load? Is it, amygdala hijack? There can be many things that are going on. And so one of the reasons that the vagus nerve can be, over signaling or compromised is toxicity. And this is interesting. One of my dear friends, Dr. Christine Schaffner, who treats very chronically ill patients, she's found that like 90% of her chronically ill clients have what's known as vagus nerve toxicity. There's also a Tufts neuroscientist, Michael Van Eckler, who called it vagus nerve infection hypothesis. But the idea is this. So, think of this location anatomically, right? You have your mouth, which has a lot of toxins. It could be metals from amalgams. It could be viruses, anything that's going on in the mouth, microbes. And they're all draining. The exit route is along the trigeminal nerve on the jaw. And then it drains down the neck. And there's a lot going on in the neck. We've got the nerves, the structural things like the bones, the fascia, the lymph, the veins. And what Dr. Schaffner found with the help of a researcher, Marco Ruggiero, is that, think of a traffic jam, right? You've got theoretically 4 lanes of traffic, but maybe 3 are closed for construction. So things slow down and they don't move. If your lymph, which is surrounding your vagus nerve, is congested because there's just a heavy load, or it's not draining at the key lymphatic points, It backs up. It compresses. It would be like sitting in the middle row of an airline between two linebackers. I've had that happen. Like you can't even, no
Mhm.
elbow room. You can't even turn the pages of your book. So now your vagus nerve is trying to signal, but it's compressed by the lymph or the fascia. We brace for impact, and then the fascia kind of sticks in that pattern and doesn't unravel. And so by using a topical remedy like an oil, we're doing two things. We're stimulating it, and we're also helping to unravel the root cause that is causing the problem.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that is so fascinating. We are back with the IQ podcast. We've been chatting with Jodi Cohen, who's an expert in using essential oils. Now, Jodi, I wanted to ask you, you've mentioned a few times topical use of oils. Are there ever any other forms of oil use that you recommend, for example, whether it's aromatherapy or even ingestion of oils?
I'm kind of an efficiency person. I think smelling inhalation is the most effective and cost-effective way to use oils, because what people don't realize is nose cells are brain cells, and smelling goes directly
Mhm.
to the emotional part of the brain, the limbic system, because smell is so critical to survival. We smell food, we smell water, we smell predator odor, we smell fire. There's a reason that smell evokes such powerful memory, because
Mhm.
we're using smell. The amygdala is taking inventory from all of the senses and then trying to document it either as familiar and therefore safe, or unfamiliar and dangerous. So many people, they smell blackberries and it brings them back to their childhood summer. They smell mothballs and they remember their grandparents' cottage. So I think that inhalation is the most effective way to use it. I think ingestion can be powerful if you're working with a practitioner. It can kill a lot of things like oregano. Some people like it because it is powerful at killing, but sometimes you can kill the good along with the bad. So just work with a practitioner if you're going to do that. And I think diffusing can be effective, but also, it's a little bit like, for anyone who's ever been to an all you can eat buffet, you don't need to eat the whole buffet. You maybe take way too much food on your plate, you eat a little bit, and then you're satiated. I believe that smell satiety is the same thing. You can smell it from the bottle, and at a certain
Mhm.
point, you don't smell it anymore. And so
Mhm.
you've had enough. When you're diffusing 24/7, it's more than you need.
Yeah, understood. I oftentimes do recommend aromatherapy for some of my patients, particularly those who have migraine, because I feel like you can do it topically, but I feel like, as you said, it gets right into the brain through the olfactory nerve so much faster, and it has a more immediate effect. So when you're inhaling, you recommend either just holding the bottle close to your nose, or I know that sometimes, I don't even know what they're called, but there's like absorbent pads you can use that you can just soak the oil in there and then use that, periodically to inhale. Is that something that you recommend?
Oh my gosh, it's personal preference. Like some people put a little bit on a cotton ball and put it in their bra. Some people put it on their wrist and smell throughout the day. Some people put a couple drops just on salt, and that helps to naturally diffuse. It's really, it's like, what
Your
color do you
personal
want to wear? Pick whatever
Yeah.
feels
I've
right.
also seen I've seen some lockets where they have like a little absorbent pad and then you just wear the locket and then you can hold it up to your nose, and it's a simple way so you don't have to carry something extra. You're already kind of wearing it with you. So there are just so many different ways to use it. So I want to talk a little bit about migraine because there has been some research in the benefits of essential oils for migraine, particularly oils like lavender, which you mentioned earlier, and peppermint and frankincense. What's been your experience with migraine patients or people who have chronic headache syndromes?
Yeah, absolutely. Smell can be really powerful, and it's fascinating because I think when you have a migraine, your sense of smell is really intensified. And so we do have a migraine relief blend that you can smell or topically apply on the temples. That rarely smells good to me, but when I'm having a bad headache, it's amazing. The other thing to consider is the root cause of the headache. It could be
Mhm.
lymphatic drainage, and so applying our lymph oil on the neck can be helpful. There are a lot of gallbladder meridians in the head, especially if it's kind of a front of the head type of headache, or if you are prone to motion sickness. So the gallbladder blend can be good. But yeah, it's been really a nice relief. And I think that in part it's because it helps, vasodilate a little bit, especially peppermint, and
Mhm.
also cool. And it's a distraction.
Yeah. I just want to, just a word of caution for people who do decide to do their own blends. If you're going to use it topically, you need to dilute it because I've had patients who put it directly on their skin and it is caustic. Like you do not want to put full strength essential oil on your skin. So make sure you're
Well,
diluting it or get something made, that is manufactured. It is like what Jodi offers. We can talk a little bit more about that, but I'm sorry, you were going to say something?
no, especially rosemary and peppermint are the two that are kind of recommended, and rosemary is a hot. They're both hot. So yes, start with smelling.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great, great, great. Now, lately in the eye care space, there has been another oil that's come to the forefront. And I don't know if you've heard about this, Jodi, but melaleuca oil, which is tea tree oil,
Yeah.
is actually used for a lot of eyelid issues when people have inflammation of the eyelids or they have a particular form of infestation with a mite. It's called Demodex. Melaleuca oil is thought to be helpful to help eradicate that, but also to restore the ocular surface microbiome. We all hear about the gut microbiome. There's actually an ocular surface microbiome as well. And you do not want to put it in your eyes, but there are like pre-soaked pads that you can buy that you would clean your lashes with. So, do you have any experience with that, or have you had any clients who've used it for vision issues or various
Um,
types of oils?
I always advise also against putting things in the eye. Melaleuca is basically tea tree, and it's a fabulous antimicrobial. I would, the bottom of the feet have a bunch of reflex points, and there's one. Sorry, I can't figure out how to for the
Oh,
eye. So I would we have a chart actually. I just wrote a blog last week, and there's an eye point. So I would just put it on the bottom of the feet. It's really interesting with reflex points. That's one of the other things I do. It's not just topical application; it's specific targeted topical application on reflex points because one of the things people kind of dismiss topical application because it theoretically has to get through the skin into the bloodstream to the heart and then go systemic. But if you put it on a reflex point, it can have pretty immediate impact on the body. But yeah, I
mhm.
could see why Melaleuca and frankincense in the same regard could be very anti you know anti-inflammatory, anti-infection.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's
become very popular. I've used it in a lot of patients. It does work really well. So give it a try if it's something that you've been struggling with, eyelid inflammation, blepharitis, etc. So you mentioned the reflex point. So I don't have much knowledge in this, but can you explain a little bit more about where these reflex points came from? Is it from traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture? Is it something else? And if you have some resources that you could share, that would be great as well. And we can put them in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does come from traditional Chinese medicine. And the idea is that as the fetus is developing, there are certain kind of lines of communication that stay in place when the baby is born. And so the bottom of the feet, the hands, there, if you ever get acupuncture, those are kind of reflex lines. It's just a way that energy moves. And what they're doing in acupuncture, I believe, is there's kind of a blockage in the channel. This is one of the issues with scars as well, scar tissue. It just kind of blocks the flow of energy. And so by injector, you can do oh gosh, my brain, procaine injections that kind of open up that pathway. You can do needles in acupuncture, or you can use oils to help open up that channel. And so, like the belly button is honestly our first scar. So some people really like to put oils, be it castor oil. We have a lymph oil or fascia oil that you can put in your navel, or just putting oils on reflex points can have kind of a very powerful effect. We advise people to put it over the organ or on a reflex point. Like I actually don't advise any oil on the face just
Mhm.
because it can cause a reaction. And then also, if you're sleeping and you're a tossy turny sleeper, but there are many other ways to kind of hit face points without actually topically applying.
Yeah, and I've actually had patients who accidentally get oil into their eyes, and it is again so caustic. It really burns. It's very uncomfortable. So avoid it. If you really wanted to, maybe put just a little dab under your hairline here. Sometimes I do recommend that at night, or sometimes for my migraine patients, I'll have them put a tiny bit right here in their philtrum when they're sleeping so that they're inhaling it. And hopefully that doesn't get contaminated and doesn't go into the eye. So Jodi, you've been kind of experimenting with oils. So what prompted you to start your own company, Vibrant Blue Oils? Like, how did that come about? Tell us about that.
So my background prior to becoming a mom was, I have an MBA from Columbia, and I did a lot of product development for other companies. And I stumbled into this and had kind of a cohort of nutritional therapy practitioners recognize the hard spots. It's a little bit like scratching your back. What's the hard to reach spot, right? We have a plethora of great vitamins. I'm not going to invent a better vitamin B, but helping people, especially moms, because we all have those roller coaster moments where it's super stressful and we just need something in that minute that we can do that's easy. And while gagging yourself with a tongue depressor or breathing practices work, it's too much in that moment. So smelling something, or topically applying it seemed to work really well. And my friends that I kind of shared this with said, you should do something with this. And so I went and did research and was quite surprised that no one was blending oils to kind of balance organ systems and regions of the brain. And also that they made blending sound so complicated. Like I was almost grateful that it was just a trial and error in the moment thing, because if I had done research first, I would have felt completely unqualified. So there was a nutritional therapy conference. It was $200 to be a vendor. That was my background. That was easy for me to like package things and put things together. And we decided to test it. We figured, there are 400 people attending. We'll make up 100 test kits and we'll see how it does. And we sold out in the first hour. And the feedback we received was, we're interested in oils. We understand the benefit of oils, but it seemed really complicated and we didn't really know how to integrate it into what we were already doing. So there was a lot of gratitude that I blended it for people, and I do dilute it. It kind of comes ready made so that you can just topically apply it. And we're very specific on where we tell you to apply it. And also that it was such a nice adjunct to what they were already doing,
Mm-hmm.
because so often the bottlenecks to healing are that people are kind of stuck in stress,
Mm-hmm.
or that there's a physical blockage, and the skin is so, especially things like your lymph and your fascia, it lies so close to the surface. It's not like you can take a pill for the lymphatic things in your neck. It's far easier to topically apply something. So
Mm-hmm.
it was just a nice puzzle piece to kind of help support healing.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you decided to do that because you've shared your knowledge, your experiences, and now so many other people can benefit. So thank you. Thank you for doing that for others. So how can people learn more about what you're doing, your blogs, your work, or perhaps even look into getting some of the oils? How can they find you?
Oh, our website is Vibrant Blue Oils. If I prompted any questions, feel free to send us an email at info@vibrantblueoils. And
We will put the links to your website in the show notes, and hopefully people can reach out if they have any questions. Well, thank you so much, Jodi. It's been so fascinating talking with you. I learned a lot, and I'm definitely going to use some of these tips going forward for some of my patients as well. So thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.